Welcome to another episode of Pastor Talk. We've had a little break, but we're happy to be with you today. I am Pastor Tim here with Pastor Joe.
I was going to say my name.
Well, I'm not sure if you knew it.
Okay.
So this is Pastor Joe, everybody. You're the worship pastor.
Yeah, welcome to the only show where pastors talk.
Only show where pastors talk. And we've had a break, and we've had all these questions. Where's Pastor Talk? Where do I get my weekly fix of Pastor Talk? And we're sorry. We've had summer stuff, sabbaticals. I mean, I can't tell you how many questions I fielded of people asking, but here we are. We're happy to be with you today talking about money. We're going to talk about practical wisdom on wealth. And we just had a pastor speak on Sunday. I think it was Pastor Nathan.
I don't remember. I don't know who that was.
Talked about the importance of not letting wealth be an idol. And he looked at the rich young ruler. And so I would encourage you to check that sermon out. It was I thought it was very powerful, not just talking about money, but anything that becomes an idol, a stronghold in your life that keeps you from giving your worship and your time to God needs to be looked at and checked out. And so I think today, as a follow-up to that, we want to talk more about maybe some practical things we do with money, having to do with either budget or just our thought process around it. Because it's often not talked about in the church other than you need to give, but what does that actually mean when we live in a world that does revolve around money and that does have stresses that have to do with the economy and food, housing, all these things that, you may not even think that you're frivolous, just trying to survive, which many people are right now. So what do we do? How do we live in a world without moving to a third world country? How do we live in America that does center around money and wealth and things and, things that, like Pastor Nathan said, we are one of the richest. We are wealthy being that we live in America. I mean, that just straight up is a fact. But at the same time, being that the standard of living is higher here and you're surrounded by things that we're just used to, how do we act as Christians and be good stewards of what we have and make sure that it doesn't become a stumbling block?
I think it's obligatory that anytime that you're a pastor talking about money, you have to say, Jesus talked about money more than any other subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you have to do that. So I just said it. So we did that. So check that off the list. But I think it's so important because we deal with it every day. And it changes the quality of your life. It changes what you're able to do. And in essence, it's really kind of what your power is in this world. The more money you have, the more things that you can do, the more people you can pay to do things for you, the more things that you can have, the more quality things you can have. So how much money you have changes your life in a lot of different ways. And in the last few years, I think we've seen a bigger difference in the change of how much money is enough money. It wasn't long ago that $1 million house was a mansion, and now $1 million house is the house down the street. Mm-hmm. But the incomes haven't changed, in the same manner. So no. We're kind of living in a time where food's going up, housing's going up, and it's making people think a lot about money. So we just wanted to talk about it a little bit and address some of the things that come up with money.
And I'm wondering, as I think about how money has changed, even just from growing up, it was very cash-based, always had cash on me or a check. Mm-hmm. Credit cards were there, but they weren't as prevalent. And there definitely wasn't automated payments for things like there is now. And I almost feel like, growing up it was a lot easier to see I have this much cash, I can do this much with it, or I have to balance my checkbook. You watching, young generation doesn't even know what that is. It was much more top of mind, I think, to know how much you have. And I think, and, let me know your thoughts, Joe, but, things that are automated now, like our subscription services, mm-hmm. automated payments, automatic tithe, you don't even notice the tithe anymore. We're actually, you got to pull it out of your wallet and put it in the basket, and you kind of felt that. And I think that money can kind of just go away from us until we all of a sudden realize I don't have what I thought I had. you're not checking your checkbook every, balancing it and making sure it lines up. You just look at your statement and you're like, oh, I thought it's lower than I thought. I'm not even sure what's coming out of it until you start diving in, if you're diving in at all. And, people rely on credit cards, which is nothing new. I just talked to someone who's like, we're going to put this, we need to spend $10,000 on this thing. And we just got a credit card for that. And I'm like, oh man, that's terrible. Like if you don't have the money, don't spend it. Just simple stuff. Dave Ramsey stuff,
because interest on those things are crazy.
Beans and rice and beans until you can afford stuff, right? I mean, these are just practical things that don't get taught. I mean, budgeting, we don't teach it in the church. Schools, I don't think teach it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like finances, they used to prey upon like college students for credit cards because you don't teach them how to use a credit card. You're like, here's a credit card. College students like, great, I've never had one. Let me just rack up the bill, right? I mean, it's predatory in nature on how companies do try to get after people's money without teaching them how to be good stewards of it. Whether you're a Christian or not, you should be a good steward and be able to budget and have a budget, right? And even more so as Christians, we need to be able to know where our money is going and be a good steward so that we can give generously because we have an awareness that's there that comes with having a budget.
Yeah, I do this thing with my kids when we're driving or they see some sort of ad either on TV or on a billboard or something, and they'll be like, why does it say this? And I always turn the question back around on them, like, why do you think it says it that way? And the answer is always money. If you look at how like everything works in the world, why anybody does something, unless it's a faith-based, some sort of helping people nonprofit organization, the reason why they're doing anything is because of money. And whether it's so they look better, so they can get more money, or to tell you to buy their thing, or whatever it is, it's, money makes the world go around it's just the way it is. And so, the Bible teaches us how to approach money. And, it's interesting in the Bible because lots of times we think of like a modern day Christian that's really serious about following the Lord, or look at the early Christians or different things. We lots of times imagine someone that has given away everything and that has nothing. But if you look throughout the Bible, Solomon was blessed by the Lord. I mean, with just immeasurable riches, one of the richest people, top 5 people ever in all of history. King David and all these different kings and people that God blessed. And in some ways we can see that it became a downfall for them. But also we have this kind of aesthetic that we think and we hold pastors to, or anybody that we kind of hold up. We think that they shouldn't drive a certain vehicle because it's too much. They shouldn't buy certain shoes. They shouldn't do all these different things. And we make up these kind of standards for them that, it doesn't really have any biblical merit to it. Yeah. I had a pastor that would say if King David walked in or with, adorned and all of these things, like we would judge him for being too showy and showing off his wealth and these different things. So it's not the amount of money. I mean, that's such a relative thing anyway. We are all, now in today's day and age, we are kings and queens. Yeah. We have things that people in past times couldn't even dream of. Access to food and comforts that, even though they may not cost very much to us, are more luxurious than anything people have had in the past. And generally, most of human history has been even a struggle for food for lots of people. And we have generally whatever food we want at hand, more than enough. I mean, we could all provide for many, many families. It's not as big of an expense today. And so what really should our attitude towards money and giving, and our heart posture?
Yeah. I think when you do a budget, like I just grew up with knowing you need to tithe. And so that was like the first line item of any budget is you're going to factor it in. And the good thing about 10%, which people have a problem with, I mean, I think it's biblical. You can argue about it, but the main thing is that everyone can give a percentage, a 10%, right? We're not saying you have to give $10,000 if you're making $50,000, right? But you can always give 10%. And, I go back to like the disciples in Acts gave everything they had. So if you don't like 10%, maybe you like 100% better. No, that's not practical, but 10% is. And I think apart from the number, like having that act of generosity, because God loves a cheerful giver, the Bible says, is to work yourself into a place that you can just give generously without worrying about a number. There was a famous pastor, I won't name his name, I heard him on a podcast, and he said that like he's doing very well off, book sales have come in, and he makes a lot of money. And he said that him and his wife have devoted to giving more over the years. I think they've increased like 10% every so often. He's like, our goal is to give up like 60, 70% of our income away. And so as their standard of living would normally increase, you increase your standard of giving instead, so that you don't need just more stuff, but you actually look with generosity and what God's putting on your heart to give towards. And I think that's the difference when you look at celebrities and we idolize them and we say like, oh, they've got it made because they have stuff. I mean, just time and time again, you see people that have gotten all the accolades according to this world, but are stuck in depression and drug use, and marital problems are so prevalent because money doesn't fix those things, right? Mm-hmm. There's a quote from Will Smith, who's not, right, someone that we listen to for advice, but just I think it's interesting knowing that he's estimated over $350 million. He was asked if money makes him happy. He said, I spent half of my life raising money, and now I spend the second half of my life giving it away. Once you bought everything you want, there's no material thing that can ever satisfy you. I hope everyone can feel this. When you realize that no relationship, no money, no kids can make you happy, there's literally nothing that can. You have to find happiness in your mind and your heart, regardless of all that. So his advice is worldly, find happiness in yourself. And we say find true joy in Jesus Christ, knowing who you are and identity in Christ. And so everything else falls into place. Your family, your friends, your finances falls into place when you understand your identity first. And if you just chase money to let that be your identity, or fame, we live in a culture that is just idolizing fame and platforms, where previously you had to do something of value to be able to speak to millions of people or thousands of people. And now you don't have to necessarily do anything. You just have to be really good with the camera, hope that you strike gold in the algorithm game, and you could have a million followers like some of these young children have. I call them children because there are teenagers that have millions of followers that what do you do with that? How do you steward that, right? I mean, there are good examples. I mean, Mr. Beast is not a Christian, but he also gives away tons of money. He makes more at 26 than he makes so much money, but he also gives it away. Right. I think he's a non-Christian example of someone who is like, all right, I have more money than I know what to do with. Let's help people. He just built like 150 houses for somebody. I saw a video of his. So as a church, we have to be generous. We have to empower our congregation wherever you're at. You have to be a part of the solution so that you're giving of your time, talents, and, treasure to those around you. So if you see someone in the community that's hurting, and this is why we give to a church. So think about this. If you're just going to help somebody, like I can maybe give $100 to help somebody. Well, if everyone can give that, the church is a beacon point where they see the needs coming in. They see the community. They know, okay, this person's going through a divorce. This person's going through this, that they can then take the resources and distribute it among those that are hurting. And that's the purpose of giving tithes to a storehouse like this, is that we can do more together than we can separately.
I think if you just take a moment and think about the struggles that you've had in your life, the most difficult times, I don't think most of them are going to be money issues. Like there are always times when you need money and money might solve some issues, but the most difficult times in your life are going to be, the death of a loved one, betrayal, health hardships, and those money doesn't change those things. It doesn't help you through those times. And on the inverse of that, the happiest times in your life are not when you got to go and spend your money and buy the thing that you finally really wanted. Like we all know that's so short-lived, and very often disappointing. You get buyer's remorse immediately after those type of things. It's so the most rewarding things in life, and money doesn't give you, and the worst things in life, money doesn't help you. And we know this, and yet we still have this feeling that if we just had more money, that then things would be better. But if you look at the lives of people that do have considerably more money, or even just the lives of people that have 50% more money than you, or 100% more money than you, just the next step up, are they happier? All these different things, and the answer is no. And so, but we're constantly being pushed in that direction. We're constantly being told by everything around us and all the people that want to sell you things, sell you even lifestyles and values, that money will make you happier. And we're told it so much that at the very core of our being, oftentimes we believe it. And even though we say with our mouth, yeah, I understand, and people say things like the best things in life are free. Well, that's probably not true. There's not very many free things, but we say things like that. But it's still at the core of our being. We believe that if we had just a little bit more money, we would be a little bit happier, or it would solve whatever issue. And we see that in the beginning of the New Testament. Some people gave away more, and some people gave away less. But we know that in the end, it says that they considered everybody's, and so they gave to each other, so that not one person had need. And if we look at most churches today, we see that whether you believe in 10% tithe or not, you can go do your own study on that and pray to the Lord about how much you should give. But if we look at the numbers, the average, I think, is 1% to 2% as a whole for the church. And that's including all the people that do give 10% or more, because many people do give even more than 10%. And so what that means is that the vast majority of people give nothing, or a little tiny bit every once in a while. And also, if you look and you see that there are people that are lacking things, that don't have a place to live, people that are having health issues that can't cover their bills, all these different things that the church does help with, but the church is only able to help as much as the body of Christ as a whole shares. And so when we see these numbers of giving, and we see people in need, then we can see that it's not our value of money, and it's not where it's supposed to be.
And even in the early church, Ananias and Sapphira, they sold land, and then they were asked, "Is this all the money?" And they're like, "No." And you're like, "Well, they're still giving."
No, they said yes.
Yes, this is all the money, and
this is all the money.
Some.
So I knew what you meant.
So you look at that and you're like, well, they gave probably a majority of what they got for the land. How is that a problem? And yet they were struck dead because they lied to the Holy Spirit.
Right. If they would have given a portion of the money and just said, "This is a portion of the money," they would have been said, "Thank you." That wouldn't have been a wrong thing. That would have been a good thing. But they wanted to look good and still have
keep the control.
Keep it.
So it's really a hard issue when it comes to money. And you even look at there's stories of misers like Scrooge, but real ones that had millions of dollars and would eat like breadcrumbs for dinner every single night and not give any of it away, wear the same clothes for years and years. And it's like, why? You had the money, but it was a heart thing. It was some kind of something that kept you from being generous. And so, I think practically, there's a lot of things that we're not told growing up, going back to that. And I think, I was raised with a dad that always said, because his dad said, there's nothing better than money in the bank is kind of the motto he would say. And to a point, that's like saving is important. Just because you have the money, don't spend it. Have a emergency fund, have something for when problems hit in this life, it's not going to, break the bank, if you will. And I think too, I just met with a financial advisor, and I'm not a financial guy. But it was interesting because he said, and he has like a master's in finance. And he said when he got out of school and had all these degrees, he went to a finance company and they said, okay, forget everything you were told, because what you were told in school doesn't help build wealth. It doesn't help practical things that people need day to day. And so he kind of had to change his whole mindset. And so whatever mindset you grew up in, whether you had things or had no things, like that's going to change how you live your life now and how you value money and how you, whether you save or not and how you budget. Like it's just very simple stuff as far as if you don't have the money, don't spend it, right? Like have very few things on a credit card and have a savings. Like I think it's obvious. But when you talk to people and see people that are in need and have, problems in life, you can see that they just have not, either they don't know where their money goes or they just don't have enough savings. And granted, things will come, and that's why we help people. But I think knowing, at least to having a plan, first of all, is important when it comes to money, and realizing like how much you make. Like if you can't make a budget because you don't have enough income, you got to do something. Whether you get a new job, whether you get a second job, whether you do something on the side, you do something that you don't want to do. It's not your career, but you have to in the moment. Like, there's a generation that some would say are lazy. Some would say that don't want to work. And I don't know if that's true or not. I just know that, there's a lot of mentality, especially coming out of school. And I know this even when I was in school, is like, I have my degree now, give me something. Instead of working towards it, instead of building something as a career for yourself. And, the scriptural part of it is use your talents, do what God's given you, whatever you find passion in, whatever God's leading you down, follow that. Right. But it takes work. Just because God's leading you something doesn't mean it's just going to be handed to you on a silver platter. And so whatever it is to give back to society, to give back and use your giftings to help people that are in need, starting a business, writing a book, all these things could be God-given, but require you to step out and do the hard things in order to get there. And I think when it comes to money and being frugal and saving all this stuff, like, it takes strategy, but also takes determination to see it through. And as things become harder to purchase and economy getting tougher, it just means that you might have to change your strategy. What worked 10 years ago won't work now. What you spent money on 10 years ago and said that we could afford it, you may not be able to afford now. You might have to get rid of, some of the streaming services. I mean, God forbid, right? But like you might have to get rid of some things that you find comfortable in order to make things work for your family. So I guess that's my practical advice.
What you spend your money on shows you what you value. I mean, what you spend it on and also what you don't spend it on. For somebody that doesn't have self-control, and just spends it on whatever and nickel and dimes himself to death on all these things, and then they don't have money for important things, that shows your values. Mm-hmm. It's not just a self-control issue. It's a value issue. And on the other end, if you save a lot of money but you're not giving, that also shows a value issue that you that Jesus showed us to care for the poor and showed us what that looked like, and the early church did it so well. But if you're not doing that, people come up with all these different reasons why, and they don't help people out with their issues. Generally blaming it on the other people and their choices or how they're going to spend the money if they do give them the money, and those type of things. But it shows your value. And one of the parables that is so kind of overlooked and confusing is the parable of the shrewd servant. Mm. That one where, the guy gets in trouble. And so he goes and he settles all the debts with the king's money, mm-hmm. right? And it's almost like this underhanded thing. But in essence, what he's doing is buying the favor of those people. And so if you change your perspective on money to be something that you can value and invest in people, because that's what God has called us to do, is love other people, to spread the gospel to other people, And that's the ministry that he has given us. The number one thing is those two things: love others and go to all the world and make disciples. And so what you're really doing is, if you change your mind to value investing in people, then that will change how you spend your money immeasurably. Because then if you're saving up for your investment portfolio so that you have enough money to retire at 65, and yet you choose not to help, a widow or someone that is in need with their health issue, all the number of things that come up all the time that you hear about, and then you have the resources to help them and you do not, what you're really saying is, I don't value what Jesus values. I value comfort and safety and the American dream. And that goes if you don't invest your money into ministries, if you don't, just like your time shows what you value, how you spend your money. Like, is it more important to you to be able to be comfortable when you're older, or to invest in the people that Jesus loves? And there's always a balance to these things, but oftentimes we say there's a balance, and then if you look at your bank account, it does not show that you valued those things at all.
Yeah.
You valued things and yourself.
Yeah. And I would say my last thought is that, like you said, do these things now, right? We create these goals for us down the future. When I retire, then I can do these things. When I make this much money at my job, then I can start doing these things. When I have all this figured out, or pay off my house, or we create these standards, but guess what happens when you retire? Guess what happens when you pay off your house? Something else comes up. Something else comes up to keep you from doing that because your heart's not in it. You can be generous now with little, and that means you'll be generous later. You don't magically become generous person because you have more money in your bank. And I think that's what's important to realize is, don't just keep pushing the carrot down the road. Have a biblical approach to money now. Be generous. If God puts someone in your path that needs money, help them out, right?
And I'd say take it even a step further. Don't just wait for something to come up and then it feels like an inconvenience to you, hoping that somebody that's in need won't come up.
Right.
Set some money aside and actively look for a way that you can help. Because
bring a $20 bill with you to Walmart. Say, God, put on my heart, who should I give this to today?
Yeah. And actively valuing that will begin to change your heart as well towards that money. When you give, there's something that happens that it doesn't just change your heart. It's freeing. When you hand things over to the Lord and say, whatever you want to do with this, do it. And then you actually go and do that instead of just saying it. That's freeing. And it is, I think that anything in your life, and this is all the things that God has given you, because there's nothing wrong with having things. It's just loving things and valuing things more than people and Jesus. That's when it gets bad, is when you choose to value those things. But if you go through the things that you have in your life that God has given you, and this is a mental thing, and you give them to the Lord, and you say, I give this to you. All of my money, my entire bank account, my house, my car, my children, my wife, everything that you have given me, Lord, these are yours. And go through and name them one by one, and take that moment to see, Lord, is this submitted to you? Lord, if you did ask me to drain my bank account and give it to somebody, would my answer be yes? Or am I just sitting here afraid and hoping that you're not going to ask that? Because just like the rich young ruler is like, I did all these other things. And Jesus was like, well, go and give all your things to the poor. And he went away sad. Are we just hoping that God isn't going to ask that of us? Or because God's after your heart. He doesn't need your things.
Yeah. Does God have your yes even before he asks the question, is the thing to end it on. And I said $20 bill, I think more like 50, because 20 is like the new 5. So I don't know if giving someone a $20 bill would be an insult or not today.
Yeah.
Either way, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on money. It would have to be on YouTube, so go find us on YouTube, LifePoint Church, and give us a comment on there, as well as any other topics you'd like to see on Pastor Talk. And this has been Joe and Tim.
Yeah,
and we'd like to thank
that's my name.
That's his name over here. It's Joe Guy. We'd like to thank Behringer and Lady Boss for being sponsors of the show. We'll see you next time.